Life Audio.
I didn't know I had body image issues. I had body issues
that I was trying
right?
to fix. If I can just fix them, I'll be fine.
Right. But
Yeah.
body image, that's something different.
Hey friend, Heather Creekmore here. Thanks for listening to the Compared to podcast today. Did you know that you had body image issues, or is that kind of a weird way to phrase it? That's what we're going to be talking about today as I interview my friend Angie Baughman. Angie is a podcast host of the Steady On podcast. She is a Bible teacher. She's written a Bible study method called the Step-by-Step Method, and she's founder of Steady On Ministries. And I think you're going to really enjoy her story today and be able to relate to it too. So thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Hey, are you thinking it's time for you to do something proactive for your body image issues? It's time to actually start addressing them. Well, if so, I've got just the thing for you, our 40-day journey. It starts January 7th. You can sign up right now on the website, improvedbodyimage.com. We'd love to have you. Now let's get to today's show. Welcome to Compared to Who, the podcast to help you make peace with your body so you can savor God's rest and feel His love. If you're tired of fighting body image the world's way, Compared to Who is the show for you. You've likely heard lots of talk about loving your body, but my goal is different. Striving to fall in love with stretch marks and cellulite is a little silly to me. Instead, I want to encourage you and remind you with the truth of Scripture that you are seen, you are known, and you are loved no matter what your size or shape. Here, the pressure is off. If you're looking for real talk, biblical encouragement, and regular reminders that God loves you and you're not alone, you've come to the right place. I hope you enjoy today's show, and hey, tell a friend about it. Angie Baughman, welcome to the Compared to You podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited that we get to chat again. I've been on your show, Steady On, and I participated in it's like a panel discussion. That was years ago, but it was really fun. A panel discussion was it on body image issues? Do you remember what the topic was?
It was on comparison at that time. Right. Yeah. We were
right.
talking about comparison. And then, you've been on the show a couple of times. It's Erin Todd that she introduced us. So hello, Erin. Shout out to Erin.
Shout out to Erin. But as we've talked, I've kind of heard in our conversations for your show, little hints of a personal journey that you've been on around this topic of body image. And I think my listeners will be blessed if we can just have a conversation today around how your journey's been, what you've learned. As you and I were kind of talking about it, preparing for this show, you joked that this show could be titled, "How do you know if you have body image issues?" And I was like, Angie, you don't realize what gold that is, because a lot of people,
I didn't know I had body image issues. I had body issues
that I was trying to fix. If I can just fix them, I'll be fine.
Right. But body image, that's something different. So can we start by just you sharing your story? Like, what does this look like for you over the years?
Yeah. So I'm in counseling right now, and I have been for a long time because I have trauma and abuse in my background in my childhood. So really, I think it starts with coping mechanisms to try to overcome some of the places where I have felt like I didn't have a voice. Yeah. I didn't have value. I mean, these things, I think for most of us, these issues around body are deep, right? They go deep. And so it's from that counseling journey that I began to talk about food. And my counselor, is just a beautiful woman, began to ask me questions about food in a way that I kind of didn't know that we were talking about something that was an additional issue in my life, right? Let's talk about that. And so it's been about 6 months ago from the time we're recording this that I began to understand that my behavior around food fell into the category of disordered eating, because I had this control. I used this app on my phone and counted every calorie all day long. Yeah. And when I was under my calorie restriction, which was way too low, by the way, when I was under my calorie restriction, I was good. When I was over my calorie restriction or allotment or whatever, I was bad. That was kind of the feelings that I was having. And a lot of it I did, I've realized this, the behavior was like, I deprived myself. Is that a good word for that? I
Yeah.
deprived myself kind of in secret so that when I was around other people, I could eat what they were eating and not seem like I had issues around this. I did not know I was doing this. I thought I was being disciplined. Like I thought I was being disciplined because I didn't want to add some of the pounds over the years that other people were adding. It was important in my family of origin that we didn't look like some other people in our family that had let themselves go, some of those things, right? So I thought I was being disciplined, but what I didn't understand was that I was really, with my control around food, I was masking some of the control I did not feel like I had over my emotions. And so it's been a difficult process because one of the things, as I've relinquished control over the intentional calorie counting, there are other things in me that have surfaced that have been, quite honestly, pretty hard to deal with. But because I have support in this counselor, in a nutritionist now that I'm seeing, who's aware of kind of some of the things that I've been battling, and my husband's support, because I have that support, it's actually it's felt quite not easy. That's not the right word. It's felt gentle. It's felt right to be able to say, oh, this is something that you've held on to for a long time, to try to tell you I'm okay. I'm not falling apart. If I have control over my food, if I'm staying in the calorie count that I have set for myself, then I am okay. And when I let go of that, there were some other things in my life that I had to look at and realize, this part of you is not okay. And that's really the part that needs to be looked at. I hope that's not just rambling, but that's kind of where I've been over the past few months, Heather. So yeah, I'm stumbling in the right direction, as I like to say.
Yeah, no, that's all so good. You said something like in one of your very first sentences. So let's go back to that.
Yes.
But I don't know. I'm like sitting here having my own counseling moment, actually, because you said, and maybe your counselor pointed this out, I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but because of your history of trauma and abuse, you didn't have a voice in some things. And I was thinking, like, for me personally, I would have never said that I grew up in a house with trauma and abuse because I had two Christian married parents. And so in the world I grew up in, like, that was, check. What do you have to complain about? Yeah. But now I realize, and I just did shows on this topic of like control and subjugation. Now I realize that even if you don't have like big T traumas or capital A abuse, I don't know if that's a thing or not. I just, it's like, I don't have a big T trauma, but it's like just not having a voice around your emotions, not being able. So in my house, there wasn't enough room for my emotions because a certain family member kind of had the monopoly on if you will. And so I learned to bob and weave and adjust. And this is not a day when Heather can be upset. This is not a day when Heather can be angry. This is not Heather has to, act so that like we can keep the peace, the family, and just thinking about that reality. So I know for listeners, like, did you have a voice?
Right.
And if not, goodness, like you said, there are wonderful counselors out there who can help walk you through that. But I think it's just important to kind of pull that out as a starting place. And then thinking about the connection between eating disorders / disordered eating with not having agency, which is another show we just did recently here. Like, if you don't have a voice, you don't have agency, right? You don't get to choose what's best for you and what, and so even as I coach women who are well over 50, it's still that, like, I don't know if I can trust myself. I can't.
Oh, yes.
Decisions. Have you felt that too?
Oh, yes. Talk about freeing, as I've worked with this nutritionist to just help. Like, I didn't have any idea that I could, without an app to count calories, allow my body to say what I needed, what I was hungry for, what even I liked. Heather, I didn't even ask myself the question, do you want to eat this? Do you like this? It didn't matter. It fits into my category of being an okay food. I didn't have any kind of relationship with food other than it was a necessity that was really kind of bad, but I knew I couldn't stop eating altogether. I wasn't willing to do that. And so I would live a lot on sugar substitutes and granola bars because that could, and I didn't feel terrible, but I feel so much better now. I didn't know that I didn't, I didn't know that I was really depriving my body of things that it really needed. And just the joy that's come into my life to shop, to buy the avocado that I want, to go and buy fresh fruit, to buy something that I'm going to cut up and roast in the oven. Like I didn't ever do that before. It was just a necessary thing that I had to do. And I resented the time that it took for me to even nourish myself. And it's really taught me a lot about some of the lies that I was aligning with about my own value. Like I've believed for a long time that I was valuable to God in that he has called me into ministry and called me to serve people that he loves and to love people that he loves. And so I believed in that, like equipping in that calling. But this idea that he was like, actually, I want to teach you to enjoy a kiwi. I want to teach you that you can have like enjoyment in your kitchen, as you cut up a sweet potato. Like I know these things sound so silly, but there was no friendship with food before this process. And now I'm like, oh, I'm not scared of you anymore. It's really just opened my heart to a different part of his creation that he wants me to have enjoyment from. I hope that makes sense to you. Cause like I said, I'm new at this, but at the same time, I'm like, oh no, I'm experiencing this freedom. And if my story can help anybody else say, I want that, then I'm willing to share it in the mess.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I hear in that, Angie, is just this kind of concept of like, so like you said, like worthiness, like I understand that intellectually and biblically, like I'm worthy of God's grace and I'm going to get to heaven because
check again.
Right. Check. But am I worthy to feed my body well?
Right.
Am I worthy to enjoy satisfaction?
Right.
Right. It's like almost, and I think that this is actually what diet culture has done. And it's sad for Christians. I mean, it's sad for everyone, but diet culture, I think, and by diet culture, just defining it for anyone who's brand new to that term, like diet culture is really like the culture we live in that says like thinness and a certain way to eat is almost a religion, right? It's what is best. It is what is, most morally acceptable,
and healthy. It's what's healthy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
If you're on a diet, you're healthy. If you're not on a diet, you're not
thin, you're
doing
healthy.
anything.
Right. Yeah.
But it's almost like a Gnosticism, right? Or a asceticism, right? Where it's like sort of the Gnostics separated like body from soul, right? Or the ascetics like punish, similar concept, but they punish the body, right? You have to make the physical body submit, like the body can't enjoy anything, right? And like the spirit can thrive, although I don't know how many ascetics had that happening, but I guess the spirit was free to do that, but the body was not. And it was like body bad, soul good, right? But if you read scripture, God called his whole creation good.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve, body and soul, they were good, right? Actually, soul, not so much after a couple minutes, but actually, right?
Yes.
And so this, I think it's crept into the church so much. And I mean, it's the way I believe too. Like you said it in a slightly different way, but for me, it was like trying not to eat. Like I knew I had to eat, but the goal of my day was to try not to eat, right? Like whatever I could eat to get by, like that was enough. But shifting to this concept that like nourishing my body or feeling satisfaction or enjoyment from food, like all those taste buds he gave us, I don't know the number.
Right.
But all those taste buds, like what a waste it is if you're only eating rice cakes.
Yes.
Yes. Like I didn't know rice cakes were still in stores. Like I didn't know that was still a thing. Like I thought that kind of went out with Snackwells in like 1992.
Snackwells. I haven't thought of that in a while.
Yeah, fat-free cookies. You can eat the entire box. But yeah, I accidentally got some rice cakes the other day because it was like a free thing when you you ordered something, and I was like,
Yes.
oh, I didn't
I
know
know
these
we were doing this
there.
again.
I don't think I can stand the thought of tasting those. But when we act like it's sin, and I think that's what diet culture has taught us, it's sin to be satisfied by food, right? Like we call it devil's food cake, or it's guilt free. Well, why would you feel guilty about eating something? You know, food isn't a sin, right? But we've made it, diet culture has made it into this righteousness and sinfulness and the path to heaven, the path to thinness. So it is a complicated thing. So what in all of that, my question was going to be, and I went way far away from it, that like the feeling worthy side of things, right? Like how has that part of your journey been? Because that's hard stuff.
It is hard. Yes, I'm getting there. I feel like I'm getting there. I think one of the things that always motivates me to change and to heal as I've gone through this years long process of healing from trauma and abuse is wanting to be all that I can be for my family and for the people that I serve. And so one of the things that you said, I don't know if it was in your book or in the most recent 40-day journey, is how much powerful, correct me the way that you said it, but how powerful we are when we're a woman who isn't distracted by her own body image issues, right? You just say it the way that you say it if you want to, but something like that. But it really struck me because I'm like, oh, wait a second. What if my boys, I'm a mom of 2 boys, what if my husband, what if the women that are in my Bible study group, how much better can I serve them? How much more powerfully can the Holy Spirit move through me, to help them connect with him when I'm not distracted by how much power there is in not being a woman who is distracted by her body image issue. I'm not looking right and left and deciding, oh, they must think that I don't look as good in this dress, or they must these things that are in my head.
Right.
And I really felt like the Lord was saying, not only are you worth it, but they're worth it. They're worth you. They're worth you knowing that you're worth it. Does that make sense? Right. They're worth you knowing that you're worth it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say, I'm going to stop working right now on this because I'm going to fix myself a lunch that I want to enjoy. And I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to put the good nutritious foods together, which takes a little bit more time. Right. And so, I think I'm still learning that. And the next phase of this that the Lord's really asking me to look at is like my schedule. I think there's so much with my schedule because I'm the kind of person that I want people to think I'm responsible. I want people to think I'm disciplined. And with my food, with my finances, with my schedule, like I see how all of this is related and how I've held on pretty tightly to these things, saying, this is what it looks like to be responsible. This is what it looks like to be disciplined. But he's like, but how about some spontaneity? How about some choices? What if we trust ourselves? What if every moment isn't scheduled? What if every calorie isn't counted? And you can say, what do I feel like today? Lord, how are you moving me today?
Right.
What would you have me do for this meal, for this hour? And I can see how it's all related. And it all comes down to this belief that, that he calls us he calls us daughter. He says it is good. And he's inviting me to lean into that more fully.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, and the truth is, when you're hungry, you can't think about anyone else or anything else, right? And that's not about discipline. That's about like physiology. Right? A hungry body needs to be fed.
There was 2 things that you said that made me realize how much I was denying myself food. The 2 things that like were tangible that stuck out to me is you said at one point, when it gets to be like 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon and you can't stop eating because you haven't, like, I'm like, oh, when my kids were littler, the after school hour, when they would bring home the lunches and I'm like trying to like throw the stuff away, but actually I'm eating it and I can't, because I'm so hungry by that time of day. I'm like, okay, there's that. But then also when I stopped counting calories about 6 months ago, immediately I put on like 9 pounds, which I mean, like, I say it that way because it was terrifying. I'm just like, but I'm like, you have to do this. But Heather, I was so hungry, not for like a day, but for a while. And you addressed that at some point and when we were going through that. And now that I'm eating better, it's like stabilizing. But I also, my husband was asking me actually just this morning, he's like, you seem like you're doing so much better. You look really good. What's your weight like? And I said, I've just kind of stopped measuring it. I don't feel the need every day to get on the
Right.
scale. What a beautiful thing when for 20 years, almost
Yeah.
every day, I have
Yeah.
gotten on that scale. Right. And
Absolutely.
so I see those things as a growth in my own understanding of how God sees me and what's
Yeah.
really important. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
didn't
mean,
know I was missing it. I didn't know.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, because I think it's been so convoluted that diet culture is part of Christianity. Like it's actually
Yes.
in the Bible
Mm-hmm.
that you have to step on the scale every day to make sure that you like have been a good steward of your body by not letting it fluctuate at all. Like that's kind of like its own separate religion that we've added to the Bible.
I know.
And if you think about it, people didn't weigh themselves until 120 years ago. Like they did not have any concept of how much they weighed, and they were just fine. They went through life just fine, right? I mean, I guess with tunics, maybe it's not as like you can't tell if your tunic's a little tight. I don't know. You got a little bit more grace and flexibility there, but it just wasn't a thing. Right. And it really only became a thing because of life insurance companies. And life insurance companies like doing this really weird Jenga math with something called the BMI chart, which was not even supposed to be used for this. It was just some anthropologist's observations of the size of people in the late 1800s in Europe, right? So the size of white European men in the late 1800s has somehow like worked its way in to where we think about that number on the scale every day. I mean, that should kind of tick us off. that it's had that much
Yes.
influence on our lives, right?
Yes. Yes, that does tick me off. And I tell you what else ticks me off is watching in the Zoom boxes the women who've been in your group over the last 40 days and looking at how beautiful they are and how much Satan uses, first of all, how much diet culture uses this to make money off of us. You talked about that, the collapse of the economy if we stopped buying the things, right? How much the diet culture makes money off of this and how much time and confidence in the Lord it steals from us. There are women who are called to powerful places in ministry that we can reach out and serve and touch and heal, and we can't because we're stuck in our own mind in this.
Yeah.
How do you say it, right? Because
Right.
we're so distracted
hungry.
by this. We're so hungry we can't
Right.
talk. Yeah, and we're missing the joy of Christianity, but we're also missing the calling, some of us, because we don't feel, because I'm not something enough,
Right.
then I actually can't answer this call until I get this way. And there's not an asterisk by the calling. He doesn't
Right.
say when you fit into these genes, then step forward to lead this Bible study. When you do this or that, appearance wise, right? Then answer this call. When he calls us, he calls us. He knows who we are and what we look like. And there's not a, we say this in church, you don't have to get cleaned up to come to church, but I think we don't say you don't have to get, I don't know, something else about your body in
Good
order
looking
to come.
or
exactly.
Yeah,
I think
acceptable
I think we miss that. We think, well, we don't have to be cleaned up inside, but we do outside or something. Yeah, there's a message there that's not, it's twisted. It's somehow
right. Well,
twisted.
and because I think that's the diet culture message of arrival, right?
Yes.
So the diet company sells us the before and after, right? And you believe when you sign up for that program or buy the pills or whatever, you believe you will become an after, right? And the message is that you will stay an after. That after will last forever. Like that after is the rest of your story, that you've arrived somewhere.
Yeah.
And so using that, like we become, there's a psychological term for it. I can't think of what it is now, but it's like if then thinkers, right? Or like if when thinkers. Like, so if I can just get to this look that I want, this body size that I want, this weight I want, then I will be released to go do all the things God has called me to do.
But they just keep moving the line. May I say it that way? Like there is no, right? They just keep moving the line.
Right.
So,
or you're aging. Right. And so then you're like fighting the line. It's like, oh, we moved it. Oh, but now menopause. Oh, like, what am I supposed to do with that? Right. Yeah. So and it is the enemy's scheme to keep us. And I would say not even just from calling, Angie, maybe you've observed this as well, but from relationships.
Yes.
right? From getting close to people or from initiating friendships. I mean, what have you observed?
I think just this, it's this arrival place. Like when I get this place, then I can whatever, I think. And there's so much comparison among women too, that I feel like there is. I know I do this when I'm looking right or left. I was just talking about this the other night, and like I've heard you say something similar too. We can't win when we look right or left. And so if we have a friend that's I don't even want to say these words. If we have a friend that we think we're doing better than, can I say it that way?
Yeah.
Then how are we winning?
Right.
Because actually now I think I'm better than you. If we have a friend that we like, she's doing better than me, then how are we winning? Because then we don't measure up. And so I think in our friendships and our women friendships, it limits us because well, ultimately, and this is the hardest part for me, it goes back to your Jonah verse of scripture. Ultimately, we're actually thinking about ourselves as we're at dinner, and I'm trying to measure I'm sitting at Panera with a friend and I'm remembering how many calories are in this bowl of broccoli cheese soup or whatever. Am I listening to her day? Am I listening to her struggle with her child? No,
Right.
I'm like, I can't eat this side of bread because I got, I'm like, I want to be here with you. I don't want to be here with this enemy food that isn't actually an enemy at all. Okay, I got a little bit,
that was great.
excited about that, but
No.
that makes me crazy because we're missing the connection because we're distracted by. I should speak for myself because I was distracted by what was in front of me, not wanting not to eat it, but not wanting to eat it either. And how engaged are you with the conversation when really that's what's on your mind?
Right. We're distracted by these man-made rules.
Yes.
Right. And keeps us from being obedient to what God's called us to do ultimately, right? Which is to love him and love others.
Right.
Right. And it's like, oh, but I got my food rules.
Right. Yes.
Right. Like, oh, but my food rules, and it's like, no, like there's no verse. There's no verse about that.
Right.
In fact, I'm pretty sure God freed Peter from food rules.
Yes.
Yes. So,
read it. It's in there.
Right.
Acts 10, if I can just
Yeah. I mean,
no, and the parties that we either don't want to go to or we stress about having a piece of cake at, our kiddo's birthday party or something, or, and eat it or don't eat it, but what's it doing inside us? Where, where's our focus, I guess, because sometimes I don't want to eat it, but but is it because I think I'm bad if I do? Or is it because I kind of I choose to not eat that today?
Yeah.
And then there's a big difference in that.
Right. And I think all this living in our head, and to your point, either thinking I'm better than someone or I'm not as good as someone, right? It makes us lonely.
So
right.
Good. Yes.
And then I think when we're lonely, like that distorts our relationship with food even more. Hey, friend, come back next time and you'll hear the rest of this really insightful interview with Angie, where we're going to flesh out the loneliness and we're going to flesh out some of the other issues around food and body that Angie struggled with and you just may have struggled with too. So thanks for listening today. I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living. Hey, before you go, take a listen to what one listener had to say about the 40-day body image workbook and the 40-day journey. I think you'll be inspired.
I just want to encourage anyone that is struggling with body image issues to be encouraged that this book will absolutely change your life. If you feel held back and you struggle to accept your body as a gift from our Creator, then buy the book. Freedom is possible. The journey isn't linear, but it's worth tackling the strongholds in your life that have set you on a course of feeling defeated and alone. Heather has an incredible way of tackling a multitude of issues we face head on with grace, compassion, and the love of Christ. Don't let body image keep you in bondage any longer. Freedom really is attainable if you just dive into this book and give your heart to Christ. He will transform your life. Start your journey to freedom today.
And you can pick up a copy of the 40-day body image workbook anywhere books are sold. And join us on the 40-day journey in January. You can sign up at improvedbodyimage.com.